Yeah, I finally get to see this.
Yes, so my name is Will DeWitt. I'm the DPW superintendent here. I've been going on, I'll be starting my 10th year coming up. My department takes care of the farm, the farming activities. We also do all the plowing and the lawn care and the water department and the sewer department here. So all of the whole campus with those things. The water department also has 40-something, almost 50 customers down in the Ossipee Corner village that are on our water system also. What the farm does, what's left of what the farm does, I guess I would say, at this point is we take care of about 90 acres of hay fields between the on the county complex here. We also do a wood program. We have the blueberries. We got about 1,100 bushels of blueberries down there that we do pick your own. They had it open for maybe 3 weekends, I believe it was, this summer, for the general public to come in and pick those. And then we do a wood program, which is basically just a campfire wood program at this point. We've got a couple of commitments to some state parks that we deliver directly to them with that. So our processor, we have a processor on the wood end. Process takes a log length and we cuts it down, splits it, and has a conveyor that would either put it in the truck, or in this case we have it going right into our building. And then from there the inmates sort it, and then we have brackets that we wrap on, that we put wrap on, and we sell those. The hay, just a general quick synopsis of that. Most of you might be familiar with it. We cut the hay, we have to ted the hay for a couple of days usually, then we rake the hay and then we bale it. When we bale it, the baler is in front of this wagon, so you have a tractor and the baler, and the bales come up onto this wagon, and there's 2 guys on this wagon that stack it all the way up and all the way back. We get about 170 to 180 bales per wagon load, and we run 3 wagons at a time. We drive those into our hay barn, which is a drive-through barn. So we drive in, unload off the sides, and drive out while the next wagon's being filled. All that process generally takes 3 staff members and preferably 6 inmates, 2 on the wagon and at least 4 in the barn. So we've been a little bit shy with that, which makes it that much harder for everybody else, but we've been getting by and getting it done. We used to have a vegetable garden. You're going to see coming up behind you as we come around. It'll be on your on the right-hand side. We got a hoop tunnel down there. We used to have a garden. We don't have a garden anymore because we just don't have the time or the staff to do it. The hoop garden is being used by the Cooperative Extension. They're doing some research projects in there. So they evaluate and they put together some research. Then they pass that on to other people in the community, other farmers in the community, of what varieties grow better at certain times and certain conditions. And they try to repeat the same research project in Durham and here and like over in Grafton County, so you're getting some different areas in the state. She's got a tomato project she's been doing this summer, and she just started this last week growing some kale, I believe, for the winter time, fall winter time. Olivia Saunders is the one that does that through the Cooperative Extension.
And we'll reconvene the meeting. This is the first of a series of sessions that we're going to be having that the County Lands Advisory Committee is going to be putting on. And I think now that you've had the hayride, you can see the appropriateness of starting the first session right here, right on the property itself. You're going to get the best view of all of just what it is exactly we're talking about. But before we begin, I'd like to introduce our committee, and I'll start on my left here. Representative Mark McConkey, who is the delegation's representative on the committee. We have Susan Gaudet, who's our record keeper, and she is from Wakefield. I'm sorry, getting it straight. Sandy Brocar, who's from Madison. Dale Drew, who's from Conway. And Amanda, who's the commissioner and the commissioner's representative on the committee, had a family commitment, had to leave, but she said she's going to try very hard to come back. And I'm Steve Knox, and she's also the vice chair. And I'm Steve Knox, and I'm the chair of the committee, and I'm from Albany. This is the second committee that the commissioners have formed. And the first committee discharged and basically reconvened. And the commissioners felt they wanted to form a second committee to continue that process. And we're it. But early on, this committee confirmed the mission statement that was adopted by the first committee, which is there's a handout right there on all the tables. And it's to search for optimal use or uses of Carroll County's 894 acres and buildings for the benefit of Carroll County residents and taxpayers. And this is the goal that we have set, and it's the goal that we hope to use for the feasibility study. But the question is, what should a feasibility study study? And the answer to that question should come from you, the residents of Carroll County, because you are the people who own this incredible asset. Which is why we are having these listening sessions, because we feel that that's the best way to get that information, is direct conversation with you. But we also recognize that for a meeting to be productive and get the most out of it, we really need some guidelines. And these listening sessions are no exception at all. And our committee's role is to listen. We're not to lecture or to comment, but we want to be sure that we understand what the input is here. So if at times we ask the speaker to clarify that, just so that we're sure we understand what this is going to be all about, it'll be very helpful to us. But the guidelines that we'd like to operate this meeting under is that when you recognize the speaker, if you please give your full name and the town that you live in, that you please direct all comments to the chair, that we'd like you to limit your comments to 2 minutes or less, and that you please be respectful of other speakers, giving them their opportunity to have their say as well. We'll only be recognizing one speaker at a time, because we want to give every speaker an opportunity to have their point. And we will not recognize a second speaker until everybody's had an opportunity to speak the first time. We don't want one person to try to monopolize and dominate the conversation. And also there are cards and sticky things down here in the back, and if you prefer to write your comments down and to pass them in, that's perfectly acceptable as well. What we want to emphasize is that this is your meeting. We're anxious to hear from you, what your thoughts and input are as we go forward, and I can assure you that those thoughts and inputs will be factored in as we do the request for proposal, which is the feasibility study, of what we want that feasibility study to take a look at. So with that, you talk to us. Who would like to go first? I know you're just here for the hayride. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I think you should form what you're actually asking them. Are you asking them for opinions or?
Okay, fair enough. Ed.
I understand there's a watery delivery system here that goes to some of the Ossipee people, houses. What's the possibility of expanding upon that to other houses within the local communities? Would it be feasible? It would definitely be something that might be used in the future. I would think if the water was available.
I didn't hear the question, Steve. If you could recap, maybe.
Okay. Ed is talking about the water system here.
Oh, okay.
And he was wondering if perhaps that water system could be expanded to include other residences, other businesses. Did I capture that correctly, Ed? Yes, okay. Let me just, Representative Comeau brought up a good point. Maybe I'm not as clear as I should be. What we're looking for is what might some of the future use or uses be for this property. As we mentioned, it's almost 900 acres of land. It has an agricultural history, and that has more of its past, but future we don't know. But with 900 acres of land, agricultural and forest land, certainly there may be many, many uses for that property. And what we'd like to do is to have the feasibility study go out there and determine what those uses would be. But we want to hear from the public as to what some of those uses would be. And so that's where your voice, your thoughts, and your ideas become very, very important in this process. As I mentioned earlier, what do we want the feasibility study to study? What do you think could be the best uses of this property? Yes?
David Stroke, No View Farm in Wolfboro.
Okay.
I think it would be good to use it as an agricultural high school, maybe, as a teaching facility. You have the building pretty much there, the old nursing home.
Uh-huh.
And maybe, you got a greenhouse, you've got the barns, and maybe they could come up with some kind of plan to do an agricultural school.
Could you flesh that out for us a little bit, please?
This is just something,
well,
coming up with.
Yeah, okay, all right. I mean, are you talking about a 3 or 4 year high school, or would this be an adjunct, a link to an existing high school, maybe Kennett High or Kingswood, that basically they'd offer agricultural
They
courses?
already offered, but not into the depth that you could do here.
Okay. So you see it as an educational component.
Educational, right.
Okay, all right.
You could have animals and, that you wouldn't get at the high school.
Yeah, okay.
It could be a
Yeah,
facility that's already set up pretty much.
yeah, okay. Other thoughts, other ideas? Yes?
Patricia Riker, Effingham. I've been following this for a while now, and
Yep.
one of the things that I was struck by was there was a small group of folks, I guess they're private, I don't know, but they started to grow tomatoes in Maine. And they're called backyard farms.
Uh-huh.
And their history was that they started with one hoop house. And the demand for their tomatoes grew so quickly that they ended up expanding and expanding. And so when I go, and I don't go often, but if I have to, I go to Hannaford and I look at the backyard gardens tomatoes.
Uh-huh.
And there's 3 tomatoes in a cardboard box for a mere $4. So my feeling about living here, and I've lived here for over 40 years, is that we have this enormous area that could really be multiple uses. But one of the things that I know is people get hungry and they need to eat.
Mm-hmm.
So my feeling is that the more food that we can grow locally and consume locally makes a lot of sense. And now we know what's happened in Texas and Florida, and so the prices of the foods that those people grow are going to be quite high, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, there's also the issue of the fossil fuel use in the diesel and the gas that takes to get these foods here. So I'm just here because I would like to see the county use in part, the land to grow food that would supplement what the other local people are trying to do. And there's a lot of people who are not growing their own eggs, but raising chickens for eggs and their own beef and their own pork and vegetables. The farmers markets have expanded over the time, and I just really believe that there would be quite a demand for locally grown food.
Okay.
That's healthy for people, that they wouldn't have to get from New Zealand and Chile.
Yes, go ahead, Cindy.
Patricia, are you suggesting that the county as an organization should grow this food?
Well, after listening to Will on the hayride, he would need a lot more people to help him if we were to do that. I'm not good at planning organizational things like that, so I don't know how that would work structurally, but I really don't want to see the land sold and houses built on it. I can tell you that much. I mean, the nuts and bolts of whether the county should be involved or the county should advertise for, say, someone who would like to come in and do it, who is like a farmer. Of course, you have plenty to do, I'm sure, right now, but I'm just using you as an example. But I think that there are people in this area who have come here to live because in part of the ruralness. And I'm sorry there aren't more people here today to show up. But I was at the Freedom Village store yesterday volunteering, and a woman brought in 3 dozen eggs. 1 dozen were blue, and the other 2 were brown. And she didn't know about the meeting. So I told her, and she said that she would come, but she's not here. So I'm hoping that this listening sessions that you've arranged for other places, I hope you'll have more people come. But I really think it's a great idea what you've done to get feedback, and I hope you get the feedback. And of course, I'm pro keeping agriculture, so I hope you hear a lot of people for that. But
You had made a comment, and I saw a lot of heads nodding in agreement here, and it's too early to get a sense, but when you said you hope that the county didn't sell the land, I saw a lot of heads nodding in agreement. Would any of you care to elaborate on that at all? Yes, go ahead.
Laureen Strouk, Knoxville Farm, Wolfboro. When you have a parcel of land this big, it's so hard to get land. There are a lot of people that want to become farmers, and they can't get enough land to do what it is they want. So it would be horrible if this place was sold or pieced off, especially into house lots. This is a jewel right here. They just need the right management, and you could do wonderful things.
Okay.
We were talking about it on the hayride. Pigs. They used to raise pigs here because in this rural community, a lot of people do raise their own pork for their freezer, and they're always looking for 1 or 2 piglets to raise. And if
they
they
were
knew
healthy
they could come
pigs.
to the county farm and get their piglet every spring, there'd be a good market for that. Probably not beef cows because you'd have to overwinter them, and I know that they sell their hay. But I don't know, animals, that you would be making manure and putting it on the fields. That way you wouldn't have to buy as much commercial fertilizer, so you'd save money that way. I just hope we keep it a farm.
Okay. Do you care to expand on that a little bit? I see kind of nodding in agreement.
I'm totally in agreement with them.
Okay.
I would love to see more growth here, farm-wise, animal-wise. There's so much I think we could do if we opened up our minds and worked together.
Dale.
As far as the farm end of it goes, that's such a small portion of the total amount of land that we have here. And I think we're all in agreement that we would like to see some sort of farm activity. But I think what we're looking for is out-of-the-box ideas for the rest of the 700 to 800 plus acres of land that's here. Because we have a lot of land that's not used for farming. So really like to get some ideas, and we've talked, obviously, but like maybe a cross-country ski trail or a hiking trails or something of that nature. Those are the kind of ideas we're looking for to do, as well as the farming aspect. I don't think any of us want to see the farming aspect go, but there's so much more land here that we need to figure out what to do with. Thank you.
Yes.
Neil Vanstone, Wolfboro.
Yeah.
Just thinking maybe about the Boy Scouts. I was involved with the Boy Scouts in Wolfboro for like 15 years, and might be an option for all the other towns that they might be able to come in and put up like campsites and clean out areas and have access to different things, and then they could have like a camporee or a jamboree amongst the whole county. Because I used to put one on at Brewster for state troops. But they're always looking for places to go and help out. Eagle Scouts looking for projects. You wanted trails made or paths made or something, it'd be a great project for them. But that's a good asset for the towns around, to have the Boy Scouts in there. They're always looking for something to do. So with all this land, it seems like it could, I don't know if it could give each town a section and they could work on it or something, and then once a year they have this big camporee, and I don't know. Be a way to utilize it for the public.
Okay. This is probably an unfair question. I'm completely new to this. What, in setting that thing up, would that require an investment on the part of the county to set that thing up? Or would the Boy Scout organization basically do that?
I think they could do it
Oh,
through
okay.
Annual Webster Council.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, you let it be known
Yeah.
what the opportunities are,
Yeah.
and maybe they could come and look at it and see where they could, put different troops and how they could be an asset to making trails and campsites, and, it's educational too for the kids, of course.
Yeah.
And it'd be good for you folks, I think. Just a thought.
Other comments, thoughts? This is an opportunity to really let your imagination run wild here. Yes?
Why do you need to do anything with it? Why can't it say forest land?
Okay.
Is it paid for? Or why do you have to make money on it?
No taxes, right?
Okay. In other words, just leave it as it is.
Leave it, yeah.
Okay,
Been that way for 100 years now, probably.
yeah. Yes, Ed, go ahead.
Ed Bickford from Feasibility. My concern is a lot of these things are taking on the bigger project of entire land is good, especially if the public can see a valued use for the land. The scouting project is a good one. Having ski trails, these snowmobiles and ATVs, if they could have a trail that they could drive on, which they kind of not liked in a lot of places, something that involves the whole picture in a way, but it also, instead of land just sitting there, they find value added to it. It's in recreation or education or a number of different things.
Okay. So you see a strong recreational use then for the woodlands itself.
That would be a good tie to the community, and there could be, there could also be farming and agriculture. I mean, and forestry, it's a large enough area. I think it all can be worked together. And besides that, we're pretty lucky up in this area right now to have plenty of good, clean water. How many years down the road will they be looking for large sections of land that is not polluted? You got to think forward 20 years, let's say. If the land continues to be all broke up, it'll be like Boston, New York or something. Where do they get their water?
Because that's the thing, none of us know what the future will bring 5, 10, 15 years from now. And so when we think of things, it's how much of that unknown should be factored into some of our thinking. What are some of the things that we may need that we can't even anticipate now? I know, Patricia, you kind of mentioned that about feeding and so forth, and how's that going to work? We don't know. We don't know. Yes?
Lee Fritz, Freedom. Well, I'm sort of where Pat is in a way, but basically, I'm amazed at the new interest in farming that's come about in my town. Bought 100 acres. It's a farm. We're selling his sausages in the Freedom Village store now. There's several people, and our selectman, Ernie Day, who kind of, raised turkeys, but he didn't really farm anymore. Now his son is moving back, and, they're going to do a lot more with that farm. But there's this renewed interest, I think. And like Pat, I think, I don't like, when I go into the grocery store, I don't want to buy anything from Peru or wherever, you know? But when I go in there and I see that strawberries from California are $2, and they're 3 times that if I want to buy our strawberries, there's something amiss here. I don't know quite, you know, how to make it right. And so she's also right. I mean, we wouldn't be in so much trouble with our need for gasoline if everything wasn't being trucked here. So I guess I could see that if some funds were given to the farm, it could be expanded and perhaps help in an educational way with these new people who are trying to farm. And now I'm going to put Will on the say, how much of the land do you think ideally could be used in farming of all that, if you were given the funds to do it?
Oh, I guess I wouldn't know how to answer that question. I mean, all the haylands that we use are open for different types of farming. There are other areas of land that could be opened back up that maybe once was years ago before my time to be claimed. So there's lots of land depending on what direction the folks want to go. I guess I couldn't give you an exact number, I suppose, off the top of my head.
But you could go back to raising vegetables and pigs and other things that you've done in the past when you had the funding for it?
No, we could go back to doing certain things. It's all the direction whatever direction that the decision makers want to go, we can make it happen. It's just what direction are we going, and do we have the support and the funding to get there?
Thanks.
Anything else? Yes.
Shelley Nomandin, Wolfboro. While everybody's ideas sound really good, and I think everybody here and in the community would agree, coming from rural background and wanting to do the best for the county and their residents, in listening and watching the commissioners' meetings on the television, reading articles in the newspapers, it always seems to come down to money. So while feasibility studies are wonderful, it is the almighty dollar that rules lots of things. Like something as simple as when the nursing home became vacated, there were write-ups about what was going to be used, what was going to go in, how it was going to be facilitated, and it's still sitting there. So when you can't figure out what to do with the building, how does it come that you could figure out what to do with 900 acres of land?
Well, that's a very good question, and that's what we're hoping we can find an answer to. And as you've alluded to, there are never any guarantees in life at all. And unfortunately, other studies, such as the one we're looking at here, that have been done, they end up collecting dust on somebody's shelf, and it never goes any further than that. But we're thinking, and Representative McConkey can certainly jump in here, but I think we're at a point when we've really got to start thinking about what is going to be the future of this land that we have historically have called the county farm. But as we realize that it's more than just 50, 60 acres of potential farm land, there's significant woodland forest land out there as well. And I think it's a valid question. Where do we go from here? As someone has suggested, we just let it sit idle and not do anything with it? Maybe that's the ultimate answer. I don't know. Representative McConkey may be in a better position to comment on that than this committee is. But it's time to take a good, hard look at what the future of this property may be. And who better to answer that question than the owners? You are the owners. It is yours. They manage it for you, but it's your property. And so the committee feels very strongly that you should have the input as to the direction that we should be going with this property. That's kind of, I think, the summation of the committee. Where do we go from here? Yes, Neil.
How about giving it a different name? Instead of county farm, I mean, to me it sounds old-fashioned kind of thing. Just the thought of give a spruce it up a bit, you know?
Okay.
Different name.
Any thoughts or ideas?
No, it just came to me.
Okay.
When you said county farm, I've always thought of it as old,
Yeah.
old people.
Yeah.
My mom was here. She lived to 99. So it's, to me, I relate that to the home, county farm, county home.
Yeah, like
maybe
a
come up
place
with-
where you put the indigent.
Yes. And at one time, I guess that's what I went to, you know, it was the county home. But one thing we all realize is that the times change, they evolve, for better or for worse, times change. And I guess one of the questions is, not just this committee, not just county government, but how do we respond to that change? It's going to happen, whether we respond to it or not, it's going to happen. And just as looking back into some of the history here, as was mentioned earlier, at one time this county farm was very viable. I mean, it was a strong part of the agricultural community in Carroll County. That is no longer the case.
So
Yes.
Why is it no longer the case?
I'm not in a position to answer that. I don't know. I think, so anything I say would just be a guess on my part, but markets evolve, society changes, and it just all of a sudden, I don't know. Mark, would you be in a better position to comment on that?
I'm enjoying the conversation, I'm taking notes, I'm listening, and
Okay.
and things have definitely changed. The population that was coming and was housed in the jail is a totally different population than it is today. The county used to lease other lands off granite and potatoes and everything else. I'm still waiting to read that wonderful book. But life has changed. And so we're at a point that we own all this acreage, whether it be trees or farmlands and so forth. And I think the mission is good, to listen to the people, what's still important, what's relevant, gather the ideas and decide, where we take it from there. So.
Just some history here that I think is important in our thinking. There are 10 counties in New Hampshire. 8 of those counties have closed what they call their county farms and lands. So for Carroll County to sit here at this moment and to seriously consider what is our county farm and land's future, we're not alone in this. 8 other counties have had that discussion and they've closed down their operations. So, I don't know. And what we're hoping as a committee here is that in talking to the owners, what may you come up with? What collectively can we come up with to give that a future so that in a way, we don't become the 9th county to basically walk away from our county lands? Yes.
I just had an idea. One of the meetings I attended, I believe it was Mr. Avalani, who was at the table.
Yes.
And he said that he's a restaurant owner, and he would love to be able to get his produce locally. And I thought, and I guess I'm just kind of wondering, the more I listen to people, this really is a multi-use acreage. I mean, you could have a sugar bush, you could do maple syrup production, you could do wood, firewood, or whatever the campgrounds need. You could do educational programs for the local schools that might keep kids here rather than them leaving or not having any viable skill to get a job. You could have recreational use. It sounds like you really could have a multiplicity of things that this land could provide. Now I know this lady's going to ask me, how do you do that? I don't know, but your idea of leasing some land to interested farmers or people who want to farm or grow a specialty, whatever, lettuce, I don't know. That might be one sort of nuts and bolts way to get more farming done. The Boy Scouts idea is great. Recreational use for cross-country skiing. This is already a recreational county. People come here to do those things. They come here to camp, they come here to ski and nature walks and stuff like that. I think there's a lot of people, especially people from the cities, who do not have this ability to, this exposure. I think that's a draw. So it's just, you said try to come up with ideas.
Exactly. This is a great opportunity to just really let your imaginations run wild here, And I just speak for myself here. 9 out of 10 ideas I would come up with, somebody would say, that's just not going to work. But the fact of the matter is, we shouldn't say, oh, this isn't going to work. Let others make that decision. I just don't think we should be limited. And
just in relationship to what you said, that's always coming up. Somebody said, we tried it 10 years ago and it didn't work. It doesn't mean it won't work now. I found that though. The other thing about the 8 farms that were shut down, without finding out why they shut down, what they did with their land, and whether they are pleased with their decision or not, I have a hard time taking that into an account.
that is a very good question. And what I can tell you is, and I'm somewhat at fault here, the last county, Cheshire County, over in the Keene area in the southwestern part of the state, back about 4 or 5 years ago, did a feasibility study, a very extensive feasibility study. In my curiosity, and I tried to get hold of their county administrator over there to discuss this, I believe that they made the decision, based on the feasibility study, some of the things that proposed didn't work and they just basically walked away from it. And how do we define walking away from it? Did they sell it? I don't think so. But a lot of the activities that they did there in the past, they're no longer doing. And I really would like to get into a good conversation with their county administrator and to say, okay, what did come as a result of the feasibility study? What can Carroll County learn from them? Because if we spend, as you suggested, and I'm making up a number here, $25,000 or $30,000 to do a feasibility study, and nothing comes of it at all, then, have we wasted $25,000 or $30,000? I don't know. But we can learn a lot from others' experiences without repeating those same mistakes. And so that's a conversation that I would really like to have. What did they learn from this? What did they do? And I think that's a very good question, and that's something that I think this committee will be following up on.
Well, I think you should definitely talk to the people who are productive. I think it's Grafton County and
Yes.
one other county that they're doing a pretty good job, as I understand. I would definitely be talking to them.
Yeah, I've heard, this is second and third hand, and we know things lose a lot in translation, but I've heard that the dairy operation in Grafton County is losing money. Now, I cannot vouch for that. That, again, should we have a phone conversation, but I've heard that that's not the most viable either. But but as I say, don't take my word on that. But I think there's one thing, in reference to a comment that you made, there's an old adage that I always keep in the back of my mind that was attributed to Albert Einstein. And he said that one definition of insanity is to keep doing something the same way and expect a different result. And I think we want to be very, very careful of that we don't fall into that trap. But again, just because it didn't work for them, that doesn't mean it may not work for somebody else. Because as we've talked, times have changed. We're dealing with a different situation altogether. And how do we respond to that? And I don't have an answer. I don't know. If somebody does, boy, do I want to talk to them. But there's a lot to learn here. And we have a lot of questions. And we'd like to get answers. Will?
I have a couple of questions or possibilities, I guess.
Okay, go.
I'm not looking at the specifics that everybody's talking about because I think they're all great ideas. And I think a lot of them, like the nice lady said over there, could all happen together. But one of the challenges that I think that I've seen is, what about if you had, and I don't know any of the answers to this, I'm just shooting off some brainstorming here, but you have different conservation districts in our town, right? And the conservation districts, I don't know exactly how they work, but aren't there a small committee that's on that conservation district that manages that forest land that's owned by the town? Keeping with that thought, what if we had some kind of, and we studied this in this feasibility or whatever, but we had an independent commission / nonprofit organization, whatever it is, that manages the farm. It's a self-sustaining farm. It might be qualify for more grants that as a county and as a government level we cannot apply for right now, but that and it's not asking funding from the commission, from the county, because with the county, you've got, you know, not that I'm saying anything, but you got 15 representatives and you got 3 commissioners and a county administrative, so you got 19 different people that all have different opinions and different priorities and such of how funding's going to go. But if the farm can be self-sustaining and be away from 19 people making decisions and had a smaller board, and it's a nonprofit, whatever, self-sustaining, and can draw from grants and whatever, you're changing some of the management of it, but you're making it more independent to do all these trail things and produce food and several different things. And you may have to, there's a lot to it, you have to incorporate a lot of different things, and I don't know all the answers to that, but I'm just looking at it from, is there a way to make it something that can be its own little island almost, with a different core of managers or overseers of it, and the ability to be able to get grants, because a lot of the farms nowadays are jumping on a lot of different grants for different things, and being a government agency, a lot of those grants we don't qualify for. So I don't know if that's something that's, like I said, might be a terrible idea, but I'm just throwing out something else there. There's a lot of, and even though the farming business is important, there's a lot of important businesses and a lot of big, what are we talking, $30 million budget that the representatives are trying to make decisions on here, and we're a $200,000 little slice of the pie over here, that it almost seems that if that could be separate, that would just kind of take some more, some more things off their plate to not have to worry about funding it, and not have to worry about making the decisions of things. There would be a separate board of people from the community, however you set that up, that would run that. So that's one idea. The other idea, along with that idea or any of these other ideas, is I'm just going to put my 2 cents in for the 4-H, because I'm a 4-H leader and my kids are in 4-H. There's a lot of 4-H clubs in Carroll County, but there's gotten to be, over time in history, less that focus on the animal science side of it. They're trying to bring it. There's a nice dairy club that meets a lot at Remick, I believe, and I think Remick Museum helps them out a lot. But could you do something here that maybe there's people in the southern part of this county that their kids could be involved in it if they had a place to house the animal, because they can't have it at their house. I don't know how you do it, but another avenue there of getting that built back up, because 4-H is a really good program for I believe it's a really good program for our kids, and we have different areas here that could accommodate, possibly if it was worked out with the right people, to help provide an area to do those projects.
Just be sure that I understand you, Will. I don't want to assume anything. Are you talking about some sort of a non-governmental entity then that would oversee and basically manage this, a board that in some respects would not be depending on the county for funding?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So to speak, yeah.
Okay.
Maybe the county would still own the land, and maybe the county still has a final say on something parts of it, but the monthly meetings or weekly meetings or how the cash flow is going to go and all that kind of stuff would almost be a separate committee, and it's independent. So it's not, unless there's a major hurricane that came through and knocked out all kinds of stuff. Okay, that farm might need some help from other places, but on a case-by-case basis, primarily to be its own self-sufficient bubble that isn't relying on county taxpayers.
Would they be leasing the land then from the county?
Well, I don't know if they'd be leasing it, or if the county's still owning it and the county still has the final say. I don't know that they're necessarily leasing it, but
a lease doesn't defer ownership. It just basically says that under these terms and conditions, we are basically renting the land for a certain period of time under these terms and conditions.
And I understand that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that. I don't know. Maybe.
Okay. All right.
It's
All right.
possible.
No, it's an
I
interesting
don't know the
idea.
details. I'm just saying have a whole different management team that can do all these things that the people are talking about with the land, and have it to where those people that are on that board or whatever are focused just on that, instead of having 19 people that have tons of work to do around here having to worry about what sap trees we're going to be tapping this year, and when they've got a lot of the more important things, but if you had a smaller management that could work on what trees are going to be tapped, something like that. I don't know. It's just a brainstorm idea.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, good.
I worked in the VA,
Yeah.
and under the umbrella of the Veterans Administration, I worked in a specialized program called the Readjustment Counseling Service, and they're known as vet centers. But the beauty of the vet center program, and the reason it has survived till today, is because we were fenced funding. So the large VA chief officer could not touch our money. And they could not touch our program because we had our own regional managers who oversaw the regions in the United States. And each vet center was a small team with a team leader and counselors. And so we were under the big umbrella of the VA, i.e. the big umbrella of Carroll County, but under that umbrella was the farm, whatever you want to call it, recreational, whatever you want to call it. And with that, we had our own management, we had our own funding, we had our own philosophy, how to approach what we were trying to do, and we worked sometimes, most of the time, pretty well with the bigger VA. They didn't like it because they could not come in and take our money. So when the VA medical center needed money for something at the medical center, they could not touch our money. We didn't have a big budget, but it funded over 200 vet centers within the United States. So I think Will's idea is, when you're talking about how do you implement this, that might be a really nice way. Plus, if it became a nonprofit organization, then he's right. You would have more access to grants and foundations money, and you wouldn't be coming back to the county all the time. And I think that'll be a real negative for people if they think that. So the other thing I was going to mention is the Remick Farm.
Yeah.
And I don't know, but the Bethlehem Farm that the New Hampshire Society for the Protection of Forests runs in Bethlehem, New Hampshire. I don't know if those two organizations might be people that you might want to consider contacting. I just think it's phenomenal what the Remick Farm offers and how wonderful they upkeep the buildings and the farms and the animals. I don't know how they did that. I don't know if that was in Dr. Remick's will, but they've managed to turn that historic acreage and buildings, and they've kept it a farm, and they do educational programs, and they teach people, and they have dinners, and to me, I think that's wonderful. I mean, that's why I live here. So I think the Remick Farm and the New Hampshire for the Society for the Protection of New Hampshire Forests would be maybe people that might give you some ideas about the forest land. Because they're always interested in promoting good forestry.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know how far I want to go out here, not to guide or anything, because that's certainly not our intent.
We weren't going to.
Pardon me?
We weren't going to. I just was going to remind you of that.
Yeah. But there are a lot of potential uses out there. As mentioned, we live in a changing world, and how do we respond to that? And anyway. Dale.
I have a question. The young lady in the back. You asked us why we thought it wasn't a viable operation anymore. Do you have an opinion on to why it's not a viable operation?
Well, I don't really know anything about farming.
Okay.
I will start there. But I saw this last year, the funding being taken away. If you can't buy seeds to plant and you can't hire people to do it, how, then, it's not going to succeed.
Do you think it's strictly a money issue?
I think it is for the reps. They don't want to spend that money. They don't think it's a proper thing to spend money on.
Okay.
I mean, sitting and listening, to the various discussions and seeing who voted which way, that's certainly the impression I got. And ask me again, because I don't know if I'm even answering your question.
You are.
Yeah. Yes.
But isn't that really, as we've all discussed, the changing times, it is a supply and demand, that if you don't have the people coming, like we heard about the blueberries, there's no sense in handing out more money and going nowhere.
And I think that's part of the issue, that the markets have changed.
Which is why we're looking for things that might bring the people back.
No, I'm not disputing that. I'm
No, I
just
know.
saying that.
I know.
Yeah. I think we're here because we're all wondering what options there may be and what opportunities to just use this valuable asset. And I think that's the thing we want to bear in mind, that the value of this asset and what are the uses that would benefit the county, benefit the taxpayers. And that's what we're looking for. And that's why your input is very, very important in helping us to do that, to find those answers. Damon?
I was just noticing from the hayride that if you want to make it recreational, and I'd be interested in hunting and cross-country skiing and doing all that stuff out there, I think you would have to put up some signage to delineate where the sensitive land is and then where people can do what they want. Also, I was just wondering if you could go over the timeline of when you want to have the RFP out and all that stuff. And then also, I mean, there have been calls out there in the public to sell the land off, so I wanted to throw that out there for discussion as well.
Yes. That was why when Patricia had said she didn't see that, and I saw a lot of heads shaking here, that I wanted to flesh that out a little bit to get some of the feedback on that. As far as the timeline, as you know, we've got 2 other listening sessions coming up. We hope to have them completed by the end of September. The last one is September 28th at the Gibson Center in North Conway. And next week there's one at the Moultonborough Library in Moultonborough on the 23rd, and that's from 7 to 9 p.m. No, that's from 2 to 4 as well. So we're hoping to finish up the listening sessions by the end of the month. And then depending on how we have to, factor this all in and take a look at the various input and so forth, I'm not sure when we'll be finishing that RFP, that request for proposal. That's going to be the basis of the feasibility study. That's what we're going to be asking people. This is what we want studied. And it stands to reason that the broader that is, then the more expensive it's going to be. If we just ask them to explore or study a couple of areas, then the cost isn't going to be as much. But I say that not because I want to limit any discussion at all. I think all the input should be factored in. I think as we sit here listening to you, realizing that just let your imaginations run wild. I would hate to see you coming up with any idea and kind of censoring and saying, gee, what's that going to cost? I think we should just let it go.
Do you think we're looking for a decision in 2019? Because I think there probably isn't enough time to put an RFP out to bid and then get it back for the April decision in 2018.
It could be. We don't. How do I want to say this?
We're not constrained by a timeline.
No, it's going to take time because there's some things that we don't control. There's certain aspects of the funding that basically are based on the guidelines and time schedules of other funders. And so we fall into a in line and a waiting period with them rather than our own scheduling. So to say that it'll be done by summer of 2018, I don't know when it'll be done. But what we're hoping is that we complete our part of this thing, the request for proposal. And then we just have to wait to see how the funding goes. Yes?
Who would be doing the feasibility study?
That's a good question. I think the process that has been used in the past, not here in Carroll County, but in the past, is put out to bid. And this is where the request for proposal becomes important. Because what we're saying to anybody who's considering doing the feasibility study, this is what we want you to look at. This is what we want you to explore. And then individual or organizations, in looking at that and reviewing it, would then decide whether this falls into their bailiwick, this is an area that they're comfortable with, that they can do the work for and so forth, then they'd bid for it. As to, this is what we estimate it's going to cost. And then the whole funding thing kicks in again. Yes?
And wasn't there talk or an article in the paper about an assisted living facility being possibly put out for a feasibility study to be built here? I know it's not nothing to do, but it would tie in with what happens to the land.
It might very well, now we're competing for funds. So I don't know how that works. And so to say we're competing for funds, I don't know how relevant that is. I think probably one of our major fundings might be the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and I'm not sure assisted living falls under one of their bailiwicks or not. I don't know. But needless to say, there are many organizations, municipal, private, that are out there competing for funds. So it's not just that we write a three paragraph thing and send it out there and they say, who do we send the check to? This is all a very competitive process, and we will be competing with other entities for those funds. Yes?
I know I'm a broken record, but I just...
No, you're not. You're not a broken record at all.
I just remembered that this couple months ago, I met with several of the food pantries in Carroll County, and they all expressed an interest that if ever there was to be a food production here at the county area, that they would be more than happy and eager to get their supplies from whatever was grown here. So that's just another vote for...
Well, let me ask you a question, because a comment has been made. How would you feel if all of a sudden a group of farmers wanted to lease out some of their land here, agricultural land? A lot of land is limited. If a group of farmers said, gee, we'd like to lease out some of this acreage from the county and basically grow food like that for some of these pantries and these restaurants and so forth, how would you feel about that?
What's wrong with that?
Oh, I'm asking you. Okay.
I mean, maybe somebody would come up with something, but you know,
Yeah.
that's what you said earlier.
Yes.
About, and that lady that asked me about how would I do this.
Yeah.
Well, if you've got interested people who want to work the land and farm and grow things and have that be their life's work, I mean, I'm like, what's to think about? But that's just my...
Okay. Any other thoughts, ideas?
Have you come up with any ideas to use the old nursing home, since it is a building that just has to probably have some improvements to it?
Yeah,
but-
up till now, we haven't really discussed that at all, that, as to how we do. I know the first committee never made any decisions, but they kicked around the idea, because one of the things that has been looked at, not here at Carroll County, but in other parts of the state, is what they call a commercial kitchen. And this is a commission that meets all state and federal regulations, requirements, and farmers could go in there and basically they could turn their strawberry into strawberry jam and things like that, because they don't have access to a kitchen themselves. And it meets all the federal state requirements. There's somebody there. And there was some talk about maybe the kitchen in the old nursing home could be used for that. I don't know. That was never explored or discussed. But what I can tell you, and that's not saying, and I'm not saying again, well, we shouldn't do this because it's never worked in the past, but that has been looked at in other parts of the state, and unfortunately it has not worked. There was just not enough farmer interest in doing that, and obviously there's a cost in doing that. I mean, you have to hire staff. I mean, there's upkeep and so forth to make sure this kitchen is always available. And as I say, I want to emphasize that therefore we should not look at it, but the history of that is not a positive one at all. But maybe again, we could come up with something different here that would change all of that. There was a woman that we talked with who does feasibility studies, and in talking with her, she had said that she had gotten a grant from a major economic development group in the state to look at a commercial kitchen. And she went out there and began to talk to farmers and come back and gave them their money back. Says there's absolutely no interest among the farm community at all for this. I'm not going to take your money. So I don't know.
I don't think necessarily the farmers would be interested in doing it, but maybe somebody with a culinary background might.
That could very well be. Maybe it just needs a different approach.
Wasn't the chef from the high school in Wolfboro looking to start up?
That, I'm not really in tune with that. Mark may be much more informed on that than I am.
And they just unfortunately weren't able to pull the program together.
Okay.
Who wasn't able to pull the program?
The group that was working on taking over the kitchen at the old nursing home and turning it into a teaching facility.
Were they Kingswood teachers or were they culinary people?
There was culinary people.
Working in the school system?
Independent
Oh.
of the school system.
Okay. And the problem was money?
Part of their problem was money, bonding, and all sorts of things. I think that's a little astray from where we are.
Yeah.
Be more than happy to talk to you about.
Yeah.
You might have to appeal to like certain groups of people. The farmers to grow the strawberries and somebody to do the jam and the marketing.
And that could be,
Are we there?
Silence. Has anybody missed an opportunity to speak because they've got the greatest idea in the world? Neil?
You want this, whatever it is, to be revenue producing, right? So you don't want the taxpayer to have any burden on it, right?
Well, that's what our mission statement says. That's to the benefit of the residents and taxpayers both.
Yeah.
And so there may be some definition there. I mean, I'll let Mark speak as a chair of the delegation, but if somebody came forward and said, look, I've got this greatest idea in the world that's only going to cost the county $200,000 a year, I think the county may say, we want to see a real good business plan before we get involved in that. Because they just have not had that kind of success with the county farmers, the lands as it stands now. But yeah, I think certainly and again, Mark can certainly speak here, but I think, what's this going to cost the taxpayers of the county would certainly be one consideration in anything that was put on the table.
Right.
Did I say it right, Mark?
I think you're doing a splendid job.
Well, if there's nothing else, again, I want to thank you very much for giving up a great day out there and to come down and to give us your thoughts and your ideas. And again, I want to mention that at the Molten Borough Library next Saturday from 2 to 4, and the following Thursday at the Gibson Center in North Conway from 7 to 9. You're more than welcome. Tell your friends. Bring a busload, because as I say, your input is very, very important. So very, very important.
Thanks
Very
for
good.
having us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Could I sit up?
No, it's fine.
Oh, R-I-K-E-R?
Okay. Patricia?